Here we go, talking 49ers draft, post-draft Q&A. Who are the impact rookies? What snap counts could come about for these rookies for the San Francisco 49ers? I think a lot of them are going to play, and the Niners turning down a second-round pick for George Kittle and signed him instead. All that and more coming up on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker at BD Peacock at Crocky209. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Love and appreciate all the everydayers out there that hung out with us through all the entire 6-win season for the Niners and through the draft season and free agency. Now we're getting ready for 2025. And we appreciate you. We love you. And if you're new to the show, welcome. Please subscribe on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube or anywhere you are listening to this podcast. Thumbs up as well. Notification bell, all those things helps us out tremendously. And we got to talk, I think, first today, Croc, about the it happened after we'd already done our last podcast for the week. The news came from Diana Rossini that the San Francisco 49ers fielded a trade offer of a second-round pick for George Kittle right before the draft. And her sources say it was a second-round pick. It doesn't say what team, where that second-round pick. Was it early? Was it late? We'll take a look at some teams that drafted second-round tight ends, and maybe we could get some ideas here. But according to NFL Insider, Diana Rossini, Croc, the Niners got an offer of a second-round pick for George Kittle and turned it down. Instead, extended George Kittle, making him the highest-paid tight end in the NFL, keeping him with the San Francisco 49ers. And we had talked about this very idea, Croc. So it's really interesting that the Niners actually got that trade offer that we had talked about, and they said no to it. Would GM Crocky have said no to that second-round pick, Croc?
I would want to. My wife, she was like born a Raider fan, but she's kind of transitioning over to a 49er. She won't 100% commit to being a 49er fan, but she loves George Kittle. And she's been wanting a George Kittle jersey. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm not into buying jerseys for real. And if I am going to buy one, I got to know this guy's going to be around. So now I think it's safe to purchase my wife a George Kittle jersey. Now, I think anybody that listens to this podcast, they know where I kind of stand on this topic. And it's not personal. Listen, and I look at it from a coach's perspective as well. Like, I think George Kittle he's the heartbeat of the 49ers. He's the soul of the 49ers. I really think he's the face of the 49ers. It's supposed to be a quarterback or like a big, like flashy player on defense. It's not. Like, it's George Kittle. I think everything that he stands for embodies what you want in the 49ers in the sense of like the culture, right? How the 49ers are kind of building their culture on like toughness, relentlessness, willing to go out there, banged up, hurt. He's all of that. But he's also like a 32-year-old tight end, and he's getting older. And I've kind of been on the side of the fence where I'd say, I'd rather get rid of a guy a year or two soon as opposed to a year or two late. And I think this year, George Kittle, I think he'll have a terrific season. When he starts to be 33, 34, what will it look like then? And would it be worth it to not trade him player for player? I think that's always kind of bad when you kind of look at it from that perspective. But to try to get younger at the position, cheaper at the position, right? Not having to allocate, $19 million a year or whatever it is to a tight end, which he's worth it. He's worth all of that, but not having to put that money towards that tight end and get younger. Brock Purdy continue to kind of build some younger pieces around him, add a few guys from free agency. What would that look like if you would have traded him? And, you kind of go back to the draft and you said, we'll take a look at some of the second round guys, but, you start looking at, Tyler Warren a little bit different, right? At pick 11, you start trying to look at second round. Hey, if you had 2 second round picks, could you get Alfred Collins and an edge rusher potentially, right? So now I'm cheaper at the tight end position, younger at the tight end position. I still get my edge. I still get my defensive tackle. And now I have money to play with for future additions to the 49ers. So from a GM perspective, Eric Crocker would have made the trade. But the fact that the 49ers locked him up long-term, you'll never hear me complain. I think he's terrific. And it's actually exciting to hear that he'll be a 49er for the rest of his career.
We'll just ignore some of the folks in the comments that are trying to hype up the Warriors and trash the Lakers right now, Croc. I know you don't want to hear any of that. We waited to go live until after that Game 7 with the Warriors and Rockets. Warriors advancing, so love to see that. With George Kittle, here's the thing: if you just take if it was just a random 32-year-old going into age 32 season, I think tight end, 32-year-old tight end, and here's a second round pick. And you don't have to sign him to this huge new contract. Does that in a vacuum make sense? And I'm 100% with you, Croc, and I would make that trade 9 out of 10 times. The thing is, the 10 out of 10th time, it's not just a random guy. It's George Kittle. And I look at this draft and I look at George Kittle and I think, man, okay, so you trade away George Kittle, you create another need, and then you come out of the draft probably a worse football team. And George Kittle is so important to the 49ers, the way he plays. And I think just from a locker room perspective, what he's meant to the 49ers organization, he's the guy that's on the movie poster. He is such a good player, such a good run blocker, pass catcher. Normally it would make sense, but I think I side with the Niners on this one. If it's obvious we know why they didn't do it, but I think I would also not do the trade and just pay George Kittle, because I also think tight ends are underpaid. And so paying George Kittle more money than any tight end in the NFL is still only $20 million per year. And you say only $20 million, a lot of money, but that's a bargain. We went over when George Kittle was signed, Croc, what some of the wide receivers in his neighborhood are making, right? And you start talking about like Jerry Jeudy's, and I think he's making a little bit more than Jerry Jeudy per year, but it was right in that neighborhood. Jerry Jeudy and a couple of guys ahead of him is right around where George Kittle is getting paid. I mean, it's a no-brainer. If you got a guy like that, I just don't think you let him go. And we'll take a look here, and I wonder if it was one of the teams that drafted a second round, because a second round pick could be 33, it could be 64, right? So that's a big difference too. So I wonder which team was offering. And there were a few tight ends that did go in the second round. Mason Taylor was the first tight end selected in round 2. That was the pick right before the Niners selected Alfred Collins. So pick 42 overall, 10th pick in round 2. The Jets selected Jason Taylor's kid, Mason Taylor, tight end out of LSU. Right after that, the Niners drafted Alfred Collins. Then a few picks later, the Rams, who I don't think the Niners would have traded him to if they were the ones calling. So that would have been a non-starter even if the Niners wanted to trade him. They're not going to trade him to the Rams. They drafted Terrence Ferguson, which I thought was a reach, at pick 46 overall, number 14 in round 2. So just a few picks, 3 picks actually, after the Niners took Alfred Collins. And then a few picks later, it was, where is it? Elijah Arroyo. Yeah, a few more picks after the Ferguson selection. It was the Seattle Seahawks who selected Elijah Arroyo, a tight end out of Miami. So they picked 50. So if it was the Seahawks or the Rams calling, then there's no way. Was it the New York Jets potentially the ones making that call? And pick 10 in round 2, 42 overall. It's a pretty high pick in the second round if they were indeed the team. Now, I don't know. I'm just looking at the teams that drafted second round tight ends, and I don't even think the Seahawks or Rams would even call. And if they did, that's just an easy no from the San Francisco 49ers. But that would be an interesting wrinkle if it was one of the division rivals were one of the teams that called, because then you couldn't even, you really couldn't do that. Would that change it for you too, Croc, if it was the Rams or the Seahawks calling?
There's no way in hell I would trade George Kittle to either one of those.
Right.
And again, like in the perfect world, like I don't want to trade George Kittle at all, right? Like the fandom in me said absolutely not, right? Like just too much, the culture, everything like that. But just the business side, right? I'm removing my 49er cap for a minute, and I'm just looking at it from that perspective. And it's hard not to, right or wrong, we saw Dallas Mavericks kind of do something kind of similar. Now you got Anthony Davis in return, but trading Luka, the fans, I saw someone in the chat say, fans will revolt. The fans revolted against Dallas Mavericks, for the Luka trade. And you don't want that. But Luka also, 25, 26-year-old superstar in the league. He's much younger. For the Laker fans definitely weren't as upset to see Anthony Davis go, who had really been the Lakers MVP up to that point of the trade. So it's not superstar for superstar, but it's saving money and you have an aging guy, and I'm curious to see what he's looking like. Not this season. I think he's still going to be terrific this year. The following year, when you look back, a couple years, say maybe that second wouldn't have been that bad? Or would you talk yourself into say, nah, it's just more important to have George Kittle on your team?
And so, yeah, you're a worse football team, I think, if you end up drafting one of those second-round tight ends, and if you had traded George Kittle for a second. And
Tyler Warren, you don't think that the fans would have been excited to see him?
I think they would have been excited to see him, and now you are kicking your defensive line can back around, right? So let's play that out. So you go Tyler Warren, pick 11, because Colston Loveland went.
Who ended up going 14th to the Indianapolis Colts.
Yeah, went 14 to the Colts. And so then you're sitting there in at pick 43 now. And so you could still go Alfred Collins, and then maybe you pair him with a defensive end there. And who's the best defensive end available after, say, pick 42? Probably the highest pick that I would say is likely that could have been offered is that second rounder that the Jets used on Mason Taylor. So let's even go that high, a top 10 pick in round 2. So the best.
Where did Ohio State edge go? JT
Tuimoloau. So essentially you'd be looking at the Niners taking both of the Colts players, because the Colts drafted him at pick 45, JT Tuimoloau, defensive end out of Ohio State. So the Niners might have ended up with both of the Colts picks instead if they do this trade, if we're playing it out that way. The next guy who I liked was Nick Scorton. He went 51 overall, middle of round 2. Nick Scorton, Texas A&M edge rusher. Then you had Oluwafemi Oladejo that the 49ers were rumored to really like a lot. I think pick 52 is too high for him. You go through the rest of round 2, and I think there was a couple. Mike Green ended up going to the Ravens at pick 59. I mean, talent-wise, Mike Green would be the play in the pick there, and obviously there's some off-field stuff, and that's why he fell to the Ravens at pick 59, late round 2. So, and I get you.
Okay, so there's that. That's the question, right? And he does have the off-the-field stuff, but that you can't disregard totally. But for this exercise, Warren, Alfred Collins, Mike Green. How fan base, how would you feel about that? But now, again, you don't have George Kittle, but you also have more money to go towards free agency, especially moving forward. So.
Yep. And I think that sort of a plan would have probably had to coincide with free agency, because I don't think the 49ers do what they did in free agency, letting everybody go, if they didn't know they were going to have to pay someone like George Kittle. And if they have that extra $20 million per year, whatever he's going to be making this upcoming year, would they have kept more guys? And then that would have maybe changed the complexion of the draft completely. Maybe they're not searching so hard for defensive tackles and multiple defensive tackles. So maybe you go a different position there. Maybe you're drafting a receiver there instead to make up for the loss of George Kittle. So that would change a number of things and potentially completely change the entire draft for the 49ers just with that one move. Let's talk
butterfly effect.
Yeah, exactly. Let's talk draft. Let's talk impact rookies. Got a lot of questions here in our post-draft Q&A already, so keep those coming in the chat as well, and we'll get to them next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers brought to you by Upwork. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more. Experts ready to help take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries. I've been a freelancer on Upwork back in the day. I was helping folks back in my early podcasting days get their podcasts up and going. There's IT, AI, web development, marketing. You might hire the next Brian Peacock at Upwork. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. So find the right talent. And it's so easy. It's free and simple. Posting a job is completely free and simple. And within a day, multiple qualified candidates to choose from in most cases. So visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's Upwork, UPWORK.com, Upwork.com to connect with top talent and grow your business today. Croc, which rookies do you think... Let's put it two different ways. If you had to pick who's going to be the rookie of the year for the San Francisco 49ers, and it could be a different answer, but what 49ers player is going to play the most snaps this upcoming season?
Oh, I mean, do you start to kind of look at the safety position, the rookie out of Kansas State?
Marcus Siegel? He might have to start.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, look at the 49ers safety position. I thought there was an opportunity for a guy to come in as a starter, whether it was a rookie or a free agent. Like, that was a position I would have loved to see the 49ers target high, right? Like, hey, let's get a safety. Jair Brown, not 100% sure about him moving forward. But then you hear about Malik Mustafa, who is going to miss, potentially half the season, recovering from some kind of an ACL procedure that he had to get done. So now there's an opportunity for a safety, a young kid to come in and really play, force his way to the lineup. And he's a terrific athlete. I've been clamoring for the 49ers to get a legit athlete at the safety position. And they got somebody who's not just an athlete at the safety position, but very versatile as well. So could he find himself not only playing a bunch of snaps on the defensive side of the ball, but potentially on special teams as well?
By the way, so looking at the veteran safeties the 49ers brought in, they did bring in Richie Grant. They still have George Odom, and Jason Pinnock is also a veteran safety that the 49ers have on the roster. So and it was funny because a couple of weeks ago, it was like, oh, Jair Brown's going to be fighting for his job. Jair Brown's going to have to play strong safety for Malik Mustafa, who's not ready to go. So, or maybe free safety, and one of these other veterans potentially play strong safety. So there is some competition there for Marcus Siegel as a late 5th round pick. He's going to have to look really good to win that job, even with Malik Mustafa out against guys like Richie Grant, who started a bunch of games in the NFL. Jason Pinnock has been around, and even George Odom, who started games already for the San Francisco 49ers. You got to be ready to go. And the thing with Siegel that I'm not sure about, Croc, is we just haven't seen him play a lot of the single high. If he's going to come in and play free safety, we just haven't seen him do a lot of that. And I think the nickel stuff he'll be fine with when he drops down. So maybe does that make him more of a strong safety candidate, and you keep Jair Brown playing free safety in that case? Because it just with the speed, you would have thought, okay, they're trying to get faster in the secondary. Marcus Siegel would maybe be more of a free safety for the 49ers, and they do interchange and drop down at different times. But maybe Siegel, since he's played more around the line of scrimmage, would fit better, especially immediately at strong safety, especially with the injury to Malik Mustafa.
Yeah, the safety positions are very interesting. I would say, especially free safety, you kind of have to be like the quarterback of the defense. So, obviously you have the linebacker, he calls out stuff, but in some defenses, in particular, like, what I was in with the New York Jets, the safety was a guy that, he was calling out the strong side, calling out the coverage, make sure guys doing this, doing that. You kind of direct a lot of traffic. So, with Siegel, I'd say the athletic part of just, going back and being more of a deeper safety, I don't think that would be the issue. It's the mental aspect of it, and how well does it get a grasp on what the 49ers are trying to do defensively? How quick does it take him, or how long does it take him to be able to do that?
And if the 49ers don't like what they see in OTAs or even early in camp, they can bring, like, I'm not worried about the safety position in all, Croc, because the Niners seem to figure it out, and they can bring a guy in off the street and like, oh yeah, he's just going to start every game and be good. Right. So like, I just fully expect that whoever's back there is going to be fine. I don't know if it's like the John Lynch safety magic or whatever it is. But they just seem to be able to find a way to have solid safeties, no matter if it's someone they drafted, someone they plug in off the street, whatever it is. So I'm just going to go into this thing expecting the Niners are going to figure it out, and they're going to be all right at safety. Obviously, I think there's probably less competition for Nick Martin at linebacker. It's kind of D Winters, and that's it. Right. You got Luke Gifford, your boy. There is Jalen Graham still kicking around, but I don't think they love him. Curtis Robinson's more of a special teamer. Tatum Bethune is more of a middle linebacker. And obviously now that you draft a 3rd round guy over a 7th round guy, he's going to have every opportunity, I'm sure, Nick Martin, to win that job, or at least win a lot of snaps. So, I mean, the obvious answer is on the defensive line and Mykel Williams. So we'll take Mykel Williams out of it. He's going to play every down, whether it's end or even kicking inside sometimes. But I don't think Alfred Collins is an every down guy necessarily. We're going to do Alfred Collins and CJ West breakdowns on tomorrow's episode, so stay tuned to that. But there's potential that CJ West and Alfred Collins as rookies are still rotational and just working in with Kevin Givens and Jordan Elliott, even if they start some games. So I think the sleeper in this is probably Nick Martin, round 3. And how about Upton Stout, Croc? Because how many snaps did the number 3 corner play last year? If he's the starting nickel, and he's going to have an opportunity to win that starting nickel job potentially between him and Trey Brown being the 3rd corner, how many snaps did Bernardo Green play last year? Upton Stout could play that many and potentially more.
John Chapman said that the 49ers are in nickel 75% of the time.
There you go.
So if he is indeed someone who can, come in and play at nickel spot, and again, there's a transition playing that, especially at the NFL level. Now, because he played it so much at the college level, maybe he's just more comfortable playing that and understanding his run fits. Usually that's the biggest transition. And more times than not, we see a guy who was an outside cornerback, but maybe didn't have, the length measurables that the NFL is looking at. So he has to slide inside. It's like, it's kind of newer for me. I'm not used to playing here, understanding the run fits and how to fill gaps and all those things. But a guy like Upton Stout, like he's been there, he's played there. Maybe it's not as big of a transition for him. Matter of fact, one of his trainers reached out to me and said he would love to come on the pod and talk about Stout. So maybe we have him do that and pick his brain and see, is this a guy that's willing to come in or able to come in day one and take over that nickel spot for the Niners.
Play right away. I love it. Dark horse, Upton Stout to potentially lead all rookies aside from Mykel Williams in snaps this year. Because that nickel, that's the big portion of the plays, right? And if someone like Alfred Collins or CJ West are more rundown guys and aren't rushing the quarterback on third down and not in a lot of nickel snaps, that's going to cut their snap usage in half at least, potentially, right? So Upton Stout could be on the field potentially 70% of the snaps for the Niners as a rookie. And that would be a whole heck of a lot. That might even be more than a defensive lineman who starts because they'll rotate it out in and out a little bit more on the defensive line. Next, Croc, we're going to get in the chat. I already see some good questions here from the faithful listeners of Locked On 49ers. Got a ton of great questions here, including the Saleh effect. And there's a nickname getting kicked around for 49ers 7th round quarterback, Curtis Rourke. I'm going to run that one by you as well, Croc. Next. All right, we're going to go to 49er Gang 916. The Maple Missile going deep. What do you think? I'm assuming because Curtis Rourke is Canadian, that's what this is about. The Maple Missile. How's that nickname, Croc? I like it because nobody else has it. I don't want people to start calling him like K-Roar or something like that, right? Like none of that. I know I heard Tet McMillan doesn't like the nickname Tet. And it's like, dude, it's the first part of your name. And I'm sure as heck not going to call you T-Mac. Like, that's just lazy. If it's not Tet, you got to come up with something else. JT Tuamolau says he hates JTT. It's like, man, that's going to be an uphill battle for you, brother. Because it's like,
we don't know how to say your name.
That's your initials, man.
We don't know how to say your name. That's where that comes from. We got to call you JTT. I'm glad you explained kind of the Maple Missile because I didn't know where they were going with that nickname. But I think you gotta drop some bombs before you get that nickname for the 49ers.
Yeah, and you got to get on the field, and he might not even have a uniform this year if he's rehabbing his ACL all year long. And Kyle Shanahan talked about how he might be a redshirt year for him. And so we'll see if the Niners even have a third quarterback on the roster behind those two guys. So it might be a little while before probably next preseason, before we even get a chance to see some missiles from Curtis Rourke being thrown out there. This is an interesting one, and I know that Robert Saleh had a big effect on the 49ers draft this year. Option 0 says, the last edge that Saleh drafted for the New York Jets was 235-pound Will McDonald. Mykel Williams is 260 plus. Is this a scheme philosophy change? I'll say this about the Jets. First of all, Robert Saleh was not in charge with the Jets. So, like, I think there's some personnel stuff that the GM said, I like this guy, I'm going to draft him. You use him, Rob, right? Like, I think that might have been some of the situation. I don't know that Robert Saleh himself was like, hey, man, we need to draft Will McDonald because I need a 235-pound outside linebacker, edge rusher on this defense. I think Joe Douglas, the GM, was the one that was doing the shopping and then said, hey, here's the groceries, Robert Saleh, you cook with what I give you.
I didn't realize that Will McDonald was 235 pounds. Now, I just looked it up in what he was at his combine, 239. So he probably played lighter than that. And we watched a lot of him coming out of Iowa State. Mm-hmm. He didn't look like he was a 240-pound guy.
He definitely played bigger than that. He was playing like 5 technique. Remember, they had those defensive ends that were like shaped like outside rushers, but they had him playing like an interior role. He had a really weird role in college, and so he definitely plays bigger than that. And so, I'm sure they wouldn't draft someone that Robert Saleh didn't like. You're not going to draft someone your head coach doesn't like at all. But I think it's entirely possible that Robert Saleh had a bigger say as defensive coordinator in the 49ers draft in 2025 than the whatever year that was, the 2022 draft for the New York Jets, as crazy as that might sound.
As far as a philosophy change, I think that it's more so about Alfred Collins and what he is as a defensive tackle. Like that's completely different than what the 49ers have been drafting and what they've been drafting players to be. Now, you may look at Javon Kinlaw, and obviously he was a very large human being, but he was still more of a penetrating pass rushing type of 3-tech, where Alfred Collins is a nose tackle and really plays on one side of the line of scrimmage, does a lot of his work there. So that's where, in the sense of the philosophy change, if that's what they're looking at, I think it's with Collins, not with Michael Williams.
Let's talk a little bit about wide receivers. Vieta asks, what does the wide receiver lineup look like this year with the loss of Debo and the addition of a 4th-round rookie and maybe a 7th-round rookie as well? We'll see if Bergen makes the roster. He's more of a returner, according to Kyle Shanahan, so that's where he's going to shine if he is on the roster as a rookie. And then Floyd the Barber asks, what's your honest expectation for Ricky Pearsall this year? So Pearsall's got to be a starter, right? And Brandon Ayuk might not be out there, but Pearsall's going to start either way. Week 1 might look something like no Ayuk. You got Pearsall, Juwan Jennings, and Jacob Cowing, because Demarcus Robinson, who the 49ers signed, is going to be suspended as well, right? So you can't count on him in those early games when Brandon Ayuk is out. So it's Pearsall and Jennings week 1, probably the starters. You might see a lot of 2 tight end sets. Might see a lot of Kyle Juszczyk in those early weeks. And look, rookie Jordan Watkins might have an opportunity to prove he was worth that 4th-round pick. You got Trent Taylor, Isaiah Hodgins, Tariq Owens is still with the San Francisco 49ers, Russell Gage, veteran with the San Francisco 49ers. But if Demarcus Robinson is suspended, Croc, and Brandon Ayuk is not ready to play, what other options do you have? It's going to be Ricky Pearsall and Juwan Jennings.
Now, I was going to say, don't sleep on Isaiah. All he does is catch touchdowns, Hodgins. And he's a Bay Area native. And, I'm very familiar with Isaiah. And, we've kept in touch, throughout his NFL career so far. And he's a guy that anytime you give him an opportunity, he does well with it. So he's a bigger guy. He was actually in the top 10 of my receiver rankings when he was coming out of college. And I think his drop rate was like the best in that class coming out. I think maybe Henry Ruggs and then Isaiah Hodgins, but like drop rate was terrific. Solid hands. He's a big frame. He's a fluid mover. I would love to see him get a real opportunity. Now, if he doesn't get a real opportunity, then I'm going to be upset with the 49ers because they've done this before. One of my guys, Lavelle Hawkins, and Hawk went to the Niners, thought he was going to have a great opportunity, and they kind of pushed him along to the side. He got upset and was like, give me a chance on kickoff return. He ran it back to the crib and scored another touchdown in the game and still got let go. So hopefully Isaiah Hodgins gets dealt a better hand than what they gave my guy Lavelle Hawkins.
Oregon State great Isaiah Hodgins, 6'3", 200 pounds. I remember seeing him come out of college. He was smooth. He's a big man that can move, but Kyle Shanahan, remember, he doesn't draft tall receivers who are also fast. If you're tall, you can't be fast. If you're fast, you can't be tall. That's the rules for Kyle Shanahan.
I don't think Hodgins is fast.
I mean, yeah, he's not fast.
I don't think he's fast.
But his best year of his career, 2022. So he was drafted in 2022 by the Buffalo Bills. And I don't remember what happened. Did he just get cut after camp? Because he was on the New York Giants in 2022, made his biggest impact that year, played in 8 games, 33 catches, 351 receiving yards for the Giants, another 33 catches in 2023. Then last year played hardly at all for the New York Giants. I think there was an injury involved there somewhere with him, right?
So what happened his one of the first years with the Buffalo Bills, he couldn't find his way onto the roster, but then they had a bunch of injuries. So they had to, bring him up to the active roster. He caught a few passes, did well. They tried to put him back on the practice squad, and the Giants said, oh, no, we'll claim him. And then he went, and over the second half of the season had 30-plus catches, was scoring touchdowns, went to the playoffs, he had over 100 yards receiving and a touchdown in the playoff game. And that was kind of his thing. Like after that, it was just kind of hard to have any type of real consistency with the New York Giants. And then last season, it was kind of the same thing. It was just like they threw a lot to Malik Neighbors. They threw a lot to Wan'Dale Robinson. He was out there on the field more times than not, but just the opportunities weren't quite there. So for a 49ers team, that's kind of, don't know exactly what's going on with Brandon Ayuk and when he's going to be ready. And, you do have Jacob Cowling. He's a different type of receiver. You talked about the DeMarcus Robinson stuff and having to miss some time with suspension. I think this is a terrific opportunity for Isaiah Hodgins.
And to answer the Ricky Pearsall question, I mean, right now, today, I would bet he leads the San Francisco 49ers in receptions. I mean, it's either him or Kittle.
It's that year two.
Right.
And this is the time that we see like those guys, right? The rookie year doesn't start off well. We've seen that for most of the guys. It's not hot to start off, but then you kind of, pick it up. And we saw Ricky Pearsall towards the end of the season start to look like, oh, okay, there it goes. And he fits. He fits what the 49ers want to do. He's a really smart dude. He's a hard worker. He has terrific hands. You got to see some playmaking ability. As the season went on and he got more comfortable. So I'd expect him to really take over as kind of like that lead guy to start the season because there likely won't be a Brandon Ayuk out there. So, I mean, who else is not going to be Juwan Jennings? And Jennings, he's good at what he does. He was almost 1,000-yard receiver last season. But in the sense of kind of who you're building more of your passing game around, it'll be someone more like Ricky Pearsall as opposed to Juwan Jennings.
And I would imagine once Brandon Ayuk does come back, Jennings would go to his number 3 wide receiver role that he's so good at, but Pearsall would stay in the starting lineup opposite Brandon Ayuk. So that's why I say that it's a really good opportunity for Ricky Pearsall to potentially lead the 49ers in receiving yards. He has to avoid the doghouse though before he gets to week 1, Croc. So that's a big hurdle that he's got to clear for sure. I think we're out of time here, Croc. It was fun chatting with you guys. We're going to get deeper into this draft class. We've done a couple of prospects already, more film work we're doing on the defensive tackles. We're talking Alfred Collins and CJ West on tomorrow's episode. A teaser as well, and I don't know if he might be on for tomorrow's episode, but I'm going to have our guy, Joe Marino of Locked On Bills and Locked On NFL Scouting on the podcast because I want to talk about the trades that happened with the Bills moving up ahead of the 49ers, any insight from Joe. And Joe is an analyst that is really good at the draft. He's awesome. If you ever listen to Locked On NFL Scouting or Locked On Bills, Joe Marino is phenomenal. And he actually really loves the San Francisco 49ers draft class this year. So I want him to break down some of the 49ers prospects as well. So Joe Marino is going to come up on an episode soon, chatting with me and Croc about the 49ers draft. We're going to keep breaking down all the prospects, some of the undrafted free agents as well, as we go post-draft and into OTA season and on our way to training camp in 2025. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, YouTube, everywhere you get your podcasts, and Croc and I back tomorrow, right here, Locked On 49ers.